Welcome to The Work of Warriors, a podcast dedicated to bringing mental wellness to the entertainment industry. I'm your host, Kim Ravage. This podcast is dedicated to the artists we've lost to mental health, addiction, and suicide, and to those who are still suffering in silence. I'm excited to introduce our guest today. She is a dear friend. Her name is Kristin Pelletier, and she is the founder of Safe Harbour Coaching. She is certified in trauma and addiction, including relationship betrayal trauma. She and I met on Instagram, thanks to the algorithm gods, if you will. We just crossed paths and realized very quickly that our methodology in coaching, as well as our values and our boundaries just as humans, were very much aligned. She is compassionate and spiritual. She's a music lover. She developed Safe Harbour Coaching after witnessing firsthand the deep level of despair and stress that can happen from addiction, relationship betrayal, and trauma. And that ensued her passion for helping those who are currently living in that painful reality. Kristin's passion has always been music, and she brings with her over 25 years of experience working within the music industry. Witnessing the heavy toll that this industry can have on people and its artists, as well as a deep understanding of how the music industry works, have uniquely positioned Kristen to be able to offer support and coaching to those who are still living within a life of chaos, spiritual depletion, relationship betrayal, and addiction. Kristen is a certified Mind Rebel Academy coach, a method that is built on the pillars of community, truth, courage, and impact. Welcome, Kristin Pelletier. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, friend.
Hi, friend. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm so good. I'm so happy to see you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for making time for this. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait. Is it cool to have coffee? Like, is that taboo?
No, I just can't have too much because it hijacks my nervous system. But I have my water. You're good. You can have a snack.
I haven't done many podcasts, so I'm still, figuring out what's cool and what's not.
So here's what I think.
Okay.
I think people need less perfection. I think we've had enough polished, we've had enough perfection, we've had enough trauma on the other side of that perfection, where I think people just want to know that people who are there to help, people who are, quote unquote successful, influencers, I think we all just want to know, like, you're real, right? You're a real person. So have your coffee, have your snacks, but have your coffee for sure.
Awesome.
So you have experience with both, a lot of experience with the music industry, but also national security. And so I was wondering if you would just tell our listeners, what does that mean? How does that happen? Paint us a little visual of just whatever you're comfortable sharing, or how brief or extended you want to be. But how did you go from one to the other? It sounds like you would have had to have done both at the same time at some point.
Oh, yeah. So, along with a lot of artists, a lot of people who, just love music, it's like something it's almost like you're born with it, right? It's like in your DNA. And I grew up my whole life wanting music and knowing music was supposed to be a part of my life. But, I grew up in a very traditional, strict household where I guess in a way I was sort of the black sheep of the family, and with all due respect to my wonderful parents who just really wanted to make sure that I could make a living for myself, right? So I was, I was 17 years old when I snuck backstage at this massive festival here in Ottawa. And that is something I just never in my whole life would have ever even considered doing. And I don't know what came over me. All of a sudden, I'm standing there with my best friend and we realized, oh my gosh, backstage is just right there. We, with our little backpacks, crawled over and under cement blocks and popped up, and there were like 30 tour buses lined up in a row. And we were like, what are we going to do now? Let's pretend we're journalists. Okay, we were very young. So we go up to the first bus and we knock on the door, and Chantal Kreviazik. I don't know if you know her. She's Canadian. She's a
I
piano
don't.
player.
Okay.
Okay. She's a big deal in Canada.
Okay.
She answers the door, and I was a huge fan of her, and she was not playing the festival. So she was, as it turns out, in the beginning of a relationship with Rain Maida, who's now her husband, who's the lead singer of Our Lady Peace. And thus
Wow.
began my whole journey. They were so wonderful. They gave us interviews. We sat on the pavement in front of the bus. And
Believing you were journalists?
yeah, all we had in our backpack was like school notepads and pencils. And so we just sat, we asked questions, we wrote, and that Catholic guilty conscience inside me, when we were done, I remember I looked at her and I said, I gotta admit something. I'm not actually a journalist. And she said, honey, she said, you are who you say you are. And she went and knocked on the other tour buses, and we walked away with about 12 interviews from huge, huge Canadian bands at the time.
Wow,
And
I have goosebumps. I've never heard this story. That's amazing.
yeah, well, you and I are still getting to know each other
I
too, right?
know.
So this began my journey in the music industry, where we actually turned all these interviews into a street zine. I don't know if you've ever heard of a street zine. Back then, that was like pre-computers, right? It was pre-blogs. It was pre-everything. So we got sponsors. We had physical copies that a lot of the record stores would distribute for us. And as I continued to interview artists, really, and as my confidence grew and I got to really understand the way the music industry worked, I gained the courage to step outside of just interviewing, and I became an independent booking agent. And then eventually I started managing. So all of this is going on, you know, kind of at a crazy time, because 9/11 happened. And when 9/11 happened, my father was working for national security. He had my whole life. And I was actually working at a record label. I had been hired by a local businessman to start a local record label called Boulder Records. And my whole, just like the whole world, right? I was shook. And I was, all of a sudden, it was like my innocence in a way was gone. And I just knew I wanted to help. I didn't know how, but I applied. And I got in, and, you know, it served to be a very good career. It was financially stable. I was great at my job, but it's the government, and I know you're American, and we work differently. We work alongside each other. We were all our Five Eyes. We FBI, CIA. We would all work together. But over time, like, I couldn't shake, like, my soul was continuously being drawn back to music. So I balanced both for about 20 years. And the last two bands that I worked with both ended in the same way, with we were just on the brink, just at that point where I was considering quitting my job in the government to pursue and manage full time, when everything fell apart because of really serious mental health issues and addiction issues. The last band that I worked with, we actually opened for Bon Jovi. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is it. My whole body felt it. Like, this is where I belong. This is what I'm meant to do. And then when it became clear that the band just couldn't continue, it's a heartbreak. So I stepped away at that point, and but decided I'm going to reinvest myself into the government and protecting Canada. And then COVID hit and shut everything down, and made me reevaluate my priorities. And that's, as COVID really decimated the entertainment and music industry. And I saw so many of my friends struggle financially. They couldn't support their families. addiction wise, alcoholism went right through the roof. And I thought, you know what, maybe I'm doing this wrong. Maybe I'm supposed to be helping from the other side. And
Wow.
that's when I got into coaching, and kind of intertwined my two loves of helping people, being surrounded by music, and I officially left the government. I officially quit. So I am doing this full time, which is just crazy, but so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My gosh, I love that story. And to get hammered by two major history making events within,
Oh, yeah.
your career.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. And just like in life, right? Like
Yeah.
like this generation has had to go through so much.
Yeah. 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 It's
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. Well, the work of warriors is, warrior is someone who intentionally fights for themselves first, right? And I hear you doing that. And I know that you do that. And I know we've had a lot of conversations about that. But it's so fitting that you said when that artist, after talking to you said, honey, you are who you say you are. And I think that's so important and fits so well in the work that we do, because
Mm-hmm.
you and I work with so many people and artists and people who are, in the public eye, very successful, right? I always say
Yeah.
successful in their career, but
Mm-hmm.
struggling emotionally, feeling shame, feeling like they don't know what they're doing or that they're not worth it. Or when they really make it big, they have so much imposter syndrome. They just have so much
Yeah.
shame. Like, I don't belong here. I don't deserve this. I don't know how this happened. When
Yeah.
it's truly what they not only desire, but they're meant to do. And
Mm-hmm.
when people fight for themselves and they look in the mirror and they believe that they're worthy of the life they dream of, you have to be who you say you are and you have to love yourself.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
And so that story is, I'm a journalist. You are who you say you are, and you got to go forward with that. But like,
Yeah.
imagine if our artists could look in the mirror and say, I am worthy. I love myself. If all this goes away tomorrow, I know I did my best. I know
Oh,
I'm worthy to be here in this industry.
yeah. I know. It's worthiness and self-love is not anything that we're taught. Unfortunately, there are things that are kind of forced upon us when we're already beaten down.
Yeah.
And especially, I was raised, like I was said, in a very traditional home, a Catholic home, and all and I'm a very spiritual person, but I was very much raised like obey your parents, forgive your neighbors, love God, but I was never taught forgive yourself, love yourself. You are worthy of like these were things that I learned much later in life, and I just feel is like a gap. It's like missing in our
Yeah.
even in our educational system,
Yeah.
um, because if you can't, then I mean let's just look at mental illness, right, and mental
Yeah.
health, um, and the shame and everything. But if you can, if you I shouldn't say if, but when I get the chance to sit with people and challenge their perspective on that, it's life changing.
Yeah.
Like you see lights go off,
Yeah.
or go on, I should say. You see the
Yeah.
lights go on, not go
Right,
off,
right,
you
right.
know?
Yeah, the light that's been dimmed finally comes back on, right? Because those are
Yeah.
old tapes that are telling you, those are old memories, old voices, someone else's voice, a
Yeah.
teacher, a parent, someone on the playground who told you something, right? The
Yeah.
pivotal, people say, well, what is trauma? Who has trauma? Everybody has trauma,
Hmm.
right? But significantly, it's, I think, when we understand that it's an event that made us shift,
Hmm.
right? It caused a shift in our nervous system, in our belief about ourselves, in our belief about the world, relationships, men, women,
Yeah.
whatever. And
Yeah.
when you can realize where you made that shift and where your light went out, it
Yes.
can come back on.
Yes. Oh, I just got goosebumps. That's when I coach too, and when I know something is meant for someone, it's like I get
You
that that
feel it.
that yeah, that
Yeah.
there we go.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's that connection.
Mhm.
What is it about you that caused you to make a shift internally to be able to have this passion for artists
Mm.
to go into coaching. Like, what was that like? Because you obviously probably went through some coaching of your own.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yes. So everything that I've said, everything that I've told you how I landed here. What I haven't shared, and I don't know if you and I have even talked about this in our previous chats, but addiction does run in my family, and my husband has battled addiction his whole life. It was something I didn't learn about until after we were married, because we met we were engaged after 3 months, and we were married 9 months later. Very quick, very normal in the religious world.
Yeah.
We weren't allowed to be alone in a room together even,
Yeah.
so we didn't have a whole lot of time to really get to know each other. And marriage was just the acceptable thing to do, not to downplay
Sure.
it. I was
Sure.
so in love, but things became messy very quickly, and we went through a lot of trauma together. We lost our first child
Mm.
during birth, and you know we had to cope with that, and we were so young, and we did not have the coping mechanisms. And I just started to realize something isn't right. They say marriage is hard, but like, how hard is it? How hard is it really? It's not supposed to be that hard. And then it did come out about a year and a half, 2 years into our marriage. His addiction issues came out. So
Mm.
something that I have just been, in the throes of we'll be married 18 years this December, but separated many times, on the brink of divorce, a few times. And really what drove me into this area of wanting to help and support people who have addiction issues, and also beyond, like partners of addicts, was just all the work and all the legwork I had to do to figure out, what am I dealing with? What does he need? Especially when my entire community is religious, and
Mm.
they were very much like, pray about it. Go see this priest. No amount of prayer is going to cure your addiction. There is science behind this,
Sure.
and a couple of years ago, or I should say more than a couple of years ago, I did find a community that is doing the research, like doctors, scientists, who are sort of changing the game on addiction and the 12-step program, modernizing it a little bit. That felt good, and it felt right. And finally, he got the help he needed. And
Mm.
finally, I got the help that I needed.
Yeah.
So, that's the addiction side, which just so naturally fits with the music and entertainment side, because my experience in that industry is just that we've got all these artists who have the talent, they have the drive, they have that deep-seated belief that this is their purpose and this is what they're supposed to do. But then they get caught up. They get caught up in all the substances. And I mean substances, I don't even just mean alcohol or drugs. I mean like sex addiction. Sex addiction is the new drug. It
Yeah.
is destroying families and people. And it's there's so much shame in around it, that people don't really get help. And
Yeah.
that's where I find that's where I'm pretty vocal. I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff that
Hmm.
I talk about, but I talk about it because somebody has to.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
everybody, we have one life, and
Yeah.
I believe everybody is worthy of living a beautiful, full life.
Yeah.
um, they often just don't know how or where to start.
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah.
think, like you said, you're talking about two very important roadblocks to people being well. Well, three.
Hmm.
One is to work through the shame. Like, the shame keeps you silent, right? So you
Yeah.
don't ask for care. Then once maybe the addiction or the behavior the, depression, anxiety, whatever gets bad enough and you do speak up and you need help, it's so hard to find.
It is.
Right? It's so hard to find. Our traditional system is broken.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that I'm very vocal about. And it is, then you have an industry that is, well, I guess I'm going to say a fourth thing. You have an industry that's feeding drugs, alcohol, pampering people, putting cocaine in front of them, putting, sex in
Everything.
front of them, all these opportunities that are entire. And here's the fourth thing, that our whole culture somehow has deemed as that's when, especially men, have known they've made it. But now it's everybody. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you've got, the sex, you've got the drugs, you've got the money, you've made it. Oh, but we're not talking about how we're actually killing you.
Yeah,
It's devastating.
it is. It is. It's like,
Oh, just, yeah.
these people have chosen this life and this career, and they need to be able to do this till the end. And the only way they're going to be able to sustain that is if they're taking care of themselves. And like my practice is built around the holistic model of, mind, body, and soul alignment, which sometimes people think is hokey, but I only work with people who are open to that idea, because I believe that if your mind, body, and soul are healthy and aligned, then that's when you're going to be living your most authentic, beautiful life. When one thing is out of alignment, that's kind of when chaos ensues, right? Like that's when you feel like life is out of control, and sometimes people don't know what it is or why. But to be able to coach people into finding their alignment is just like that's what's going to take them to the end.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not just in the music or entertainment industry, in life.
Yeah. Everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You and I work with artists, but we're championing for everyone.
Yeah. I work with artists. I work with partners of artists as well. And then I also work with partners of, I work with quite a few partners of addicts, educating them on what is abuse and what isn't. Because unfortunately, a lot of people who battle substance abuse are abusive in their intimate relationships.
Mm.
It's just kind of like par for the course, I guess. Addicts, they need to protect the one thing that's sustaining them, which is their addiction. So how do you do that? You lie, you manipulate, you gaslight, and there's always someone on the other end taking the brunt of that. So part of all of, I guess, what I'm doing is just, it's education as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate your sharing your personal experience. I've learned enough over the years. I think those of us who want to help, we're helping from a place of where we've been,
Yes.
right? Like I help artists who experience emotional darkness because that's where I've been. And
Yes.
we want to help. So knowing you, to the extent that I do, knowing that there probably was a very personal piece to that.
Yeah.
And so I'm just grateful that you're using that to bring back into the world. And, it's like a celebration, right?
It's like
When you,
offering hope.
yeah, when you're in recovery of, I think we're all in recovery, by the way. I think
Mm-hmm.
every human, we're all
Yeah.
in some stage of recovery, whether we know it or not. And those of us doing like our deep work, our inner work, are in recovery from something.
Yeah.
And so I
Everyone.
guess, it's ongoing. And
Yeah.
I just talked to somebody today and he's like, I've been doing this for 26 years and I just had another awakening this summer. Like it's just evolution, right?
Yes.
But what I'm wondering is what do you do, right? What do you do on a regular basis to
Mm.
live your best life, to make sure that you don't get out of alignment? And I know we
Ooh.
don't always stay there. Like I know you probably get out of alignment, but how do you get right
Yeah.
back on? Like I just want to be clear, we are not perfect. I tell my clients, like, I do this for a living. They'll say like, well, I can't say it like you do. Well, I do this for a living and I don't always say it right. I don't always do it right. I'm not always regulated. but I
Oh, I
know how to
know.
get back, right? We have this center we get back to. How do you get back to your
How do I get
alignment?
back to my center? It's a really good, great question. So I um I use the terminology that I strive to have exquisite self-care.
Mm,
Um my self-care has changed over the years. I used to be a little bit of a workaholic, well, living that double life, right? Working for national security and working in the music industry where you've got people who depend on you for their livelihood. you know,
yeah,
I would, um, I burnt out. That's the honest truth, is that I realized that my compulsive need to be busy all the time was actually a very huge red flag that I was dealing with an anxiety issue.
yeah.
And
Wow.
when you have an anxiety problem, um, compulsive planning puts you in the control seat, right? You know what's coming. And once I was able to realize that, I was able to slow down a little bit, reprioritize, look at all the relationships in my life. And I used to be the type of person that I like, people would joke that I was like a collector of people, that I just love people. So I would just surround like, I met you, you were my friend, that's just the way it was. But then
Yeah,
I started looking around the people closest to me and really taking stock of who was good for me and who wasn't, who was maybe a friendship, that should have died a long time ago. And I kind of went inside. I do believe in the power of coaching. So I always have a coach. I recently just ended a relationship with a coach that I had because we coach and think differently. So he had different training than I did, which was fine, but we had different belief systems. And I realized very quickly he wasn't really helping me. So I am in search of a new one. I have an interview next week, but coaching, is a big way for me to keep myself accountable. Um, and then you might laugh at this, but I've learned to listen to my body. So if my body is telling me I need to sleep or just shut it down, and I mean like not for a day or two, but for like a week or a month, I will do that. Like I will go inside and kind of quiet the world, and I'll read and I'll journal. I'll walk my dog. I wish I could say I was huge into exercise and like a CrossFit maniac and everything, but that's just not who I am. Like,
mhm,
I love nature. I love walking. I love swimming. And I just try to do all the things that ultimately our souls tell us what we need. If we're able to be quiet enough, our souls will tell us what it is that we need. And that's just what I've been trying to focus on. I have to, right? We have to be, so that we
yeah,
can show up for our clients in an aligned manner and hold that space for them.
yeah. And I know that it is, it's a foreign concept for many, even people who are billionaires, right? To hear the words, listen to your body, right?
Mm.
But that is everything. That is probably the biggest gift that I ever got through coaching,
Yeah.
was understanding that mind, body, spirit, and learning to trust myself. But first, before you can trust it, you have to actually slow down and
Yeah.
listen. And I
Yes.
use it all the time. Like, I feel like, it's like, is this a hell yes or a hell no? And if somebody comes across my Instagram feed and I feel this like, unfollow. I'm not looking at who you are. I'm not going to feel bad. I don't have loyalty. It used to
Yeah.
be loyalty for me. Like, I
Yes.
think you've wrestled with too.
Yes.
Loyalty has really burned me. Um, but listening to your body is such a gift. We have a nervous system
Hmm.
that is holding everything that we've been through, holding all that we desire. And we can only find what is true if we are present and listening.
Hmm.
I always say attune, 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 self attune first. I
Yeah.
don't know what my mom's, no, what are you saying? What is your gut
Oh,
telling you?
yeah.
What is your inner pilot light telling you? And so, oh, I would never laugh at that. Mm-mm. It
Yeah.
was gold.
Yeah. And I do think that, someone, trying to remember, it doesn't matter who it was, but I had done an Instagram live where I was talking about, just this, and just how it's okay to really shut down and sleep if you need to sleep. And someone commented, I was depressed for 36 years and I spent 8 months in bed and I've never been healthier. It was like she needed a complete reset. And I don't know what her trauma was that where
Yeah.
she needed that, but how beautiful that she recognized it
Yeah.
and came out of it.
Yeah.
And that's why I just, you know, I, I laugh at myself because I also have to be accountable and say, all right, Kristen, you can't just stay in bed, like get up and walk, and there is a balance there. But I think you
Yeah.
understand my point of
I do. And I think you
balance.
also said it perfectly when you listen. Like, I literally just had this conversation with a client yesterday who said, I'm so exhausted. I just want to go back to bed.
Yeah.
And I was like, can you get quiet? Put your hand on your heart, your other hand on your belly, and
Mm,
can you just listen? Is this more of a stress or trauma response where you don't want to deal with life and you need to not face it? Or is this true exhaustion? And either
mm,
way, you're not wrong. Even if you decide, like, yeah, I can't deal with it and I need to go back to bed, hey, guess what? That's okay too.
yeah.
But your nervous system, there's so much shame around lethargy and lack of motivation, lack of energy,
Yeah.
but yet at the same time we're running at such a pace, especially in this industry. People are
Yes.
running at such a pace and then they feel bad when they have to rest or take a nap in the middle of the day or for a week.
Yeah.
It's like, that's your nervous system needing to
Yeah.
reset. It's
And
human.
yes, and people forget. They forget that human beings weren't built to be this overstimulated
Yeah.
consistently every day. Most people work on the computer every day, and then it's Netflix, and then it's video games, and it is a mental exhaustion that we've never seen in history before.
Yeah.
Like, it is like we can adapt and we can move forward and we can embrace technology, but we'll never be able to run away from our humanity, and we are always going to have to come back to that
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
healthy,
Yeah.
right? And I'm
Yeah.
not saying we need to cut out all the fun stuff and computers and everything, but I
Right.
do think there needs to be more education on our, basic humanity and what our body and mind and soul need.
Hmm. Yeah. And having that, I think, self attunement and having that
Yeah.
compassion.
Yeah.
I think of like touring artists, right? Or
Yes.
people who are on set for 3 months or a year, and it's, 20 hours a day and it's go, 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 party, 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 work, work, work. And then for families, like artists who have families who are re entering, whether they're on the road with them or not, when they
Hmm.
re enter, there's such, I think, a jolt to the
Yeah.
nervous system and to the belief system, even. Like,
Yeah.
that re entry is hard. And we don't talk about that. You
Yeah.
know, I'll go away for the weekend and come back, and my friends will be like, how was the reentry? Like, we just make that normal conversation
Yeah.
because even in the simplest of terms, coming in and out of your family can be really tricky
For everybody.
for everybody.
Yeah. I just actually interviewed a young man who's this he's the son of one of Canada's most beloved guitar players.
Mm.
He was in the did the Tragically Hip. Do you know the Tragically Hip?
I don't.
Hey, you and I need to sit
You need
down, and I need to educate you on some good Canadian music.
you
This
need
is
to send me a good playlist.
this is where you and I are going to be good for each other too. You can educate me on some bands, that you love. And
Sure.
but he said the most crazy thing. He said, I asked him, what was it like growing up with one of the most famous fathers, in Canada? And he kind of shrugged it off a bit. He said, well, as a kid, like, didn't really know too much. But then as he got older, he said there was about 10 years where his dad was only home for maybe 2 or 3 weeks a year.
Oh, wow.
And it shocked me because, well, he didn't seem to really realize that that's a big deal.
Yeah.
and then it was an interview and not a coaching session. So I wasn't about
Sure.
to coach him into, well, how did that feel? And how do you
Sure.
feel now? And what's,
Sure.
but it really did shock me that, um, the children, it affects the whole family. Like these artists who decide to pursue this life choice and this career, the whole family is affected by it. And it could be easier if the support was there.
Right.
These record labels and these studios were offering support. It could change the entire industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we live in a world where trauma is we're just now starting to understand it. And we're becoming a more trauma informed society, but it's still, I think, a lot of false narrative is that it's just a buzzword.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important that people understand, it's kind of like we were talking about mind, body, spirit, like understanding the experiences that they've had that impact them. That's, again, something all of us could benefit from. And
Mm-hmm.
understanding the nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
understanding your belief systems, learning what your values are, what your boundaries are.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Boundaries.
Yeah.
So you had asked me, and I think I accidentally skipped over it, but I when I was going through everything with my husband, like when I was in the depths of despair, to put it in bluntly, it was bad. I had three very young children. I felt alone. I didn't have anybody to talk to, because the response back I would always get is, you need to pray more. You need, and it was just, I knew that wasn't it. And one day I just met this literal earth angel. And it's actually a cute, funny story if I can tell it quickly.
Oh, you don't
Um,
even have to be quick. Just tell
okay.
it.
So I woke up. I woke up in the morning and I was supposed to take my son to this play date. So this woman had reached out to me and said, our kids are really close. Can you, it's time we meet. Why don't you come for coffee and bring your son, and they can play and we'll have a coffee. Well, I woke up in the morning and it was after a very difficult night. Very, he was in the throes of addiction at that point. So it was just, I had like bags under my eyes, and I didn't want to cancel because it was Simon, my buddy, my middle guy. And I pushed through, and I think I showed up in my PJs, like bun on the top of my head. And she coincidentally lived on the street behind me. So we walk over, ring the doorbell, and the door flies open. And there she is standing, one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life, hair blowing in the wind. And I just remember thinking, shit, sorry, I don't know. I guess if that's going to be bleeped out here, but I was just,
No. No, just be yourself.
all right. Well, I won't be myself because I had a lot of, in my inner cursing was just like, are you kidding me? Like, why didn't I put any effort into this? So she was the warmest, most gentle, beautiful woman. And within 5 minutes of her putting a coffee in my hand, I had just broke down, and she sat cross-legged in front of me on the floor and held me in this space that I had never been held in before. And she was a coach. She had just left her job in the government to open her own coaching business. And it was the first time in my whole life I felt like there was hope for me. She took me from this spot where the only reason I wasn't taking my life was my children. I couldn't leave them, and she just became a friend to me in a way that I had never really had a friend before. And then she had invited me away on this retreat weekend that she was putting on, and she was so fantastic. I was like broke, I think I was off work at that time because my son had he had to have brain surgery, so I had to stay home. And I know, just another crazy. And she said, even if you can't afford it, I want you to come. I want you to come. And that retreat changed my life. Changed my whole life. I learned about boundaries. I had never learned about boundaries. I didn't know I had the right to set them. I didn't even know what they were. And and then I hired her as my coach after that weekend, and we worked together for about a year. And I remember at the end of that year, she said, I'm being called, like I'm being pulled to something bigger, and I'm going to open my own academy, and I'm going to train coaches that will change the world for generations to come. And she said, I want you to work with me. So I ended up actually getting my coaching diploma through her school. It was a year-long intensive program, but life-changing. Yeah. So that, I'm sorry to go on that tangent, but that's how I became that's really what drew me into coaching. Yes. Sorry. You're going to have to edit that awkward part out.
I don't think so.
My brain is just going a million miles.
No, I think it's so powerful. And I think that's what people don't realize. And again, looking at traditional mental health, it doesn't give people a lot of hope.
I know.
Because you can be in talk therapy for 20 years. And if you don't understand the holistic piece, you're not going to make a lot of changes, right? And so to share that story, I think is really important. And also to, we talk about being like self-attuned, the fact that you were so, emotionally broken and have this woman show up who'd also left the government.
I know.
To be a coach. Like, that's not an accident.
Yeah. And her husband was also a recovered addict.
Wow.
Yeah. So I just got goosebumps again. I haven't actually talked about this story in a while. But I left her house, and I went home and cornered my husband and said, I just met an angel, and I have hope for the first time in 10 years. And I'm going on this weekend. Like, I didn't even give him a choice.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going, call your parents if you need help. And it was me demanding what I needed for the first time, and it was the best decision I ever made.
That's so beautiful.
And
because now you're changing lives.
Oh, you're
the angel.
You're so are you. I just think everybody has this power to help people. They often just, I say that the biggest gift you can give anybody is to just hold that space for them and not have a fix-it mentality.
Yeah.
Like, don't be running over what advice you're going to give them and what you think they need.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between therapy and coaching. That's why people can be in therapy for 20 years and not progress. Often therapy is trauma-based, and often the therapist will be looking at their client as they're broken or they're damaged, and we need to reach in and figure out why and what and pull it out. Whereas coaching is nothing about you is broken. You are a whole, capable, resourceful person, and all you need to do is be reminded of that. Yeah. And sometimes it is a lot of talking, but it's a lot of reflecting back to them their wholeness.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm again back to the bus at the very beginning. You are who you say you are.
You are who you say you are.
If I can come to you and I can say, this is who I want to be, right? This is who I long to be. And then you hold that space with me and you keep pointing me in that direction. You keep reminding me and I get to be whoever I say I want to be. Whereas the mental health system does focus on what's wrong. It's an illness. You're broken. There's, and yeah, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but
yeah, because I
like the wellness piece.
Therapy. Like, I've been in therapy. Yeah. There's a place for therapy, for sure. I just think there's not enough education over coaching, like the difference between coaching and therapy. A lot of people seek therapy when they actually they need a coach. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I think, I also think, like you said, there's a very appropriate, like, I don't know where I would be without my first therapist. That was what I needed at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And then
Well,
fast forward,
mhm.
20 years when I worked with my coach who is trauma informed.
Mm,
Um, but coaching, it's just more holistic. It's different. It just has there's just a different perspective of wellness and wholeness and
mhm.
future and vision and stepping into your true authentic self instead of only, or instead of looking at things as if they're broken.
Yeah.
You and I both shared the same story on our Instagram after you taught me how to do it. Um, but where Hardy is getting
Yes.
care for his anxiety after a near death bus accident last year. And I'm just so proud of him because, and I don't know if you read, my
Yes. It was beautiful.
caption, but
Mhm.
like we're going to tend to look at that like, oh, Hardy has mental health issues. No, nope. Hardy is a human
Mhm.
who had a near death experience
Mhm.
that landed in his body that is still hijacking his nervous system, even though he knows he's okay. And
Yeah.
he needs care to
Mhm.
figure out how to regulate his very human nervous system,
Mhm.
right? Like look at it from a lens of wellness and
Mhm.
wholeness and
Mhm.
humanity as opposed to illness and brokenness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so I I don't even know him, but I think I when I reposted I said I'm so proud of you because
Yes.
it's these people with the who are so in the spotlight, and when they're brave and vulnerable, it gives other people that freedom to do the same, you
Yeah.
know? And that's where change is going to ripple. And that's what we need is we need people to feel more comfortable to come out and say, I'm struggling. I'm going to take a breath here
Right.
and I'll be back,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Because I think of how that translates into being a mom.
Oh,
Like every day, especially when my son was little, I had to say, I need a break.
mm,
I'll be back. But again, the guilt and shame are like, nope, you should just be able to muscle through and power up and be super mom. And, we
um,
have that no matter what we're doing in life.
yeah.
And I think, like you said, we need to be honest and we need to talk about the human experience from a
Mhm.
place of wholeness as opposed to if you're
Broken.
not perfect, if you can't keep it all together, there must be something wrong with you because that is a lie.
It is. Yeah, it is. And like, and I know you feel the same way when you see artists in the spotlight, um, their struggles are often glamorized and they're used to make money, and I'm thinking of Britney Spears right now. And can you just imagine how different her life would be if she had been surrounded by people who loved her and supported her and had her best interests at heart and held her whole and like
Yeah.
walked beside her and not in front of her, you know and when I see these images of her right now, and I pray for her. I know that sounds cheesy, but I'm like, I
No.
literally, or meditate, I send her so much because I just I don't want to see that anymore. I think we
Yeah.
are evolved as a civilization now that this needs to stop,
Yeah.
and that there is help out there. It's just a matter of, I don't know, what is it a matter of? People More people like us becoming more accessible? Like, I don't know.
I think it's creating a different world through wellness. I think, it's not just we work in the music industry or the entertainment industry. We're doing this for all of humanity, right? Because, my perspective is, when artists are well, we all win. If we can bring wellness to the entertainment industry, we can bring wellness to the world because there is such a large platform. But take all that out of there when we're well, when I'm well, when you're well, your family is better.
Mm,
Your friends are better.
mhm,
Your clients are better. Like there's just such a ripple effect. And we still have so much abuse and addiction and toxicity and dysfunction that's still happening
mhm.
across all demographics, across all industries, across all families, and,
Mhm.
everywhere. And so I just think that's where my passion comes from, is when we heal ourselves, we heal the world.
Yeah. It starts at home, right?
It does. Yeah. I always
It
say the
really
world
does.
needs healing, and my contribution is I'll take care of me.
Yeah, I love that.
And if I don't start there, and you were talking about, your burnout, and a bit of my story. That's what happened to me. I
Mhm.
was a successful therapist with a successful practice until I burned out and found myself in a very dark place
Mhm.
and questioning my very existence. And I don't ever want to feel that again. I know that I can't guarantee that I won't, but I feel from doing more coaching, doing that inner healing, working on my own trauma, I get to hold the balance of gratitude. I have gratitude for everything that's going my way, and I
Mhm.
have resiliency for everything that's not. Whereas
Mhm.
before, I had to take care of all the people. I had to stay in control. I had to make sure all my clients were happy and make sure my family was happy. And I was just getting further and further left behind by my own doing
Yeah.
until I had very little left. And, that's where my passion for helping other people comes from, is you have to fight for yourself first.
Yes. We just were never taught that,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
And it's something that is learned. But I have a question for you.
What's
What
that?
what is your like biggest dream for your business? Like
Hmm.
where would you like it to end up one day?
So my biggest dream is I have a quasi luxury slash super comfortable low key sweatpant retreat center. Maybe, I don't know if you need your luxury sweatpants, I don't know. But like a retreat center near the mountains and the lake where artists can come and be
Mm,
seen and relaxed and seen and taken care of, but not pampered and doted on, like
mm,
served from a place of authentic care and concern. Like
mm.
authentic care and concern goes into your food, into, I mean, a lot of artists, they have all the things.
Yeah.
And so I want to be able to serve from a place of compassion, authentic conversation around a bonfire, really pouring into people, having yoga and, maybe a chiropractor, massage therapy, but everything is wellness integrated, and not, like you said, your self care has changed over the years, not wellness as things we're going to mark off the list, but wellness from people who have struggled, who are now doing their work,
Mhm.
where we can feel that collective energy so people can have more hope. And they are, especially for artists, to be able to have a place where we're not about the art as much as the person and their
Yeah.
soul.
Like a holistic respite
Yeah.
retreat where they can
Yes.
disconnect, not be like we're private, not no
Yeah.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's my dream too. Why do you have to live in the US? Why can't you be in Canada?
I'm not opposed to
We do
Canada.
this together. Maybe
Well, I
maybe there's
told you we have to start with a retreat. We have to do a retreat in Canada,
yeah.
and I'm all about it. Don't think I haven't already started researching. I
Yeah.
may have told my husband, like, I'm going to do a retreat in Canada with this woman. Her name's Kristen. She just doesn't know it yet.
Oh, I mean that would be amazing. I think you did you see that I had gone away to a
Yes.
retreat? Yeah, and
Yes.
it was burned down by wildfires.
Yes. Like right after you were there.
Less than a week.
Wow.
Less than a week. I got really lucky, and I yeah, everything. I do believe everything happens for a reason. I had planned this trip, and then I was leaving the resort, um, the yoga resort. I was leaving there to go pick a friend up in Vancouver. But had I not committed to picking her up at the airport, I probably would have stayed because I just didn't want to leave. It was so. beautiful. And it was very similar to what you were talking about, like the food. Oh, like just, it was all, it was just, they're all chefs, but it was like
Yeah.
healthy, delicious food, yoga, meditation, paddleboarding, whitewater rafting, which I did. I even jumped off a cliff, and I have a fear of heights. But it was just
Wow.
so soul filling that
Yeah.
I was already talking to the owners. I said, I'd like to book 2 weeks here next summer. I want to do 2 different retreats. And now, yeah, 40 years of work
Oh,
gone, but I think they've raised about at least half or close to half of what they need to rebuild. But
okay.
there's so many more of these types
Sure.
of places, in the
Yeah.
mountains. And,
Yeah.
but yeah, I love that dream. I love that dream.
Yeah. So you said you too. Anything else that you have a dream that you like when I think of my dream, like when I write down my manifestation statements, if you will, one of them is always I'm having, we are having a positive impact on the entertainment industry and lives are changing, lives are being saved. Because
Hmm.
ultimately, my greatest passion is to end celebrity suicide.
Yeah. That,
Simply, not simply, but because we have such a false narrative about what success gives us and it's killing people.
yeah.
Yeah. What about you? What is, in addition to a retreat center, is there
Um,
another goal, dream,
I
vision?
mean, all the same things as you, really. I, I would love one day. I don't know. This isn't like the ultimate goal, but I would really love one day to go on the road with a successful band, and like see the world and support the entire band and crew at the same time through sobriety meetings, meditations, one-on-one coaching. And in like, to me, that would just be the dream, like to see the world, to be a part of the music, to be a part of everything, and helping people all at the same time.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else that would, that would just be, I'd be like, well, I've made it. You know? I mean, not that it's all about making it, but you know what I
Sure,
mean.
I do. I
It's a
do.
dream, when you talk about having dreams. I think that would be pretty cool.
I have dreamt about that.
Yeah, have you?
Traveling.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm always like, okay, well, as with you, it'll be after there are no children in the home
yeah,
and I have
yeah.
to figure out a way, my husband and I work really well together. And
Mm,
so we're always dreaming that kind of stuff together. So, like
I love
what
it.
role would you play and how could you serve people? And, just looking at the gifts that we have and, um, there's nothing better than being generous too.
Hmm.
And just playing around with it and dreaming, just casting vision. So
You have to dream, right? And that's what
yeah,
I tell my clients. And at the end of almost every interview I ask, like, what is your biggest, boldest dream for your life? To the point, if you were sitting beside a really small-minded person, you'd actually feel silly telling them.
yeah,
Because if you have that dream in you, that's connected to your purpose.
yes, I fully believe that.
You know? And
Yeah,
no one's actually asked me back what mine was. So
yeah,
I do need to put some thought into that, but that is one. I've had several like physical dreams while I'm sleeping that I'm sitting on a big like blanket that looks like covered in mandalas with tea and candles, looking at Bruce Springsteen. I'm not saying I'm trying to manifest this, but that's sort of where I give my brain permission to dream, is like, how cool would that be,
yeah,
to
yeah,
to, to be having this otherworldly experience, talking about spirituality and meditation and doing
yeah.
yoga together. And
Yes. Yeah. And I think we need to normalize that conversation as well,
yeah.
right? To have dreams and to think big and to know the world is big and open. And you can, if you prefer staying home with your tea under a snuggly blanket, that is amazing. If you want to be traveling the world and flying on private jets, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
but make sure it's what you want
Mm-hmm.
and not something that someone else is telling you that you should want, and not something that your old memory or an old voice of
Yes.
someone who may not even be in your life anymore told you that you could or could,
Yes.
you should do or you could not have. That
Yeah.
we're back to that, like, what do you dream about? What do you want?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so important to keep dreaming.
Yeah. What is your, you do a lot of Instagram lives. What is your purpose for those? What do you hope people glean from those?
Yeah, it's a good question. I kind of fell back into it. So, like I was sharing earlier, my whole music career started with this music magazine, right? And interviewing. Um, it was a very natural thing to start doing when I realized Instagram had this live feature, and the support I was getting from the Canadian music industry was just so overwhelming. I had a few people reach out and say, I love what you're doing. I I've struggled with mental health, or my mom was an addict, or and I'd love to talk to you, and I'd love to share to inspire others. And that's how it started. And I didn't even have to go and seek out the first interviews. They just started coming to me. And I'm a really big believer that you can't run from what's meant for you, right? But it has been stretchy, Kim, because I am an introvert. I do not like being in the spotlight, which is probably why I never became a musician myself. I really like being on the sidelines watching. But it's just snowballed, and I'm gaining more confidence, but when I get nervous I do stutter. So that's been something I've had to work on. Um but like you started this call with saying people want authenticity, and I mean, I'm just me. I'm not a journalist. um I
But you are, honey, you are who you
I
say you are. So who are you?
Oh,
Who are you?
well, I just got goosebumps again. Well, who am I? Ultimately, I believe I'm a spiritual being, and I'm just here for a short time on earth, and just trying to, like, live my purpose, and I think that it can change. I think that all the jobs that I've had, at one point felt like this is why I'm here, and I just think that I need to continually grow and strive and evolve. And aside from the easy answers of I'm a mother, I'm a coach, I'm a music lover, I'm just me. And that's a really good question. You put me on the spot there. I'm figuring it out, you know?
Yeah. Just keep stepping into your power.
Yeah, I got a tattoo. Did I tell you that?
No, did
Yeah.
you?
So my
What does
first,
it say?
can you see it?
It's
It
beautiful. Is it the mountains?
it's the mountains. It's
I love the mountains.
out in Banff area, and then
Wow.
it's like a compass. It's got my kids' initials
That's
around
so
it.
cool.
But when you ask me, like, who are you, I'm now sort of giving myself permission to really express
Mm.
that, because you know I wasn't even allowed to get a nose ring when I was a kid. I waited till I was 37. I'm now 43, and I got a tattoo, and I'm not stopping because I love it. So I've got a sleeve booked.
Nice.
And everyone's like, are you nuts? Is she having a midlife crisis? And I'm saying, no, I actually think for the first time I'm able to honor and say, no, this is what I want to do. This is who I am, and I'm expressing it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, we could probably go on another hour. Is she
Yeah.
having a midlife crisis?
Is she
Right?
having?
How old is that term? And how well did that serve women who come into their 40s, who finally start waking up and
I
like
know.
owning their bodies and their minds and their sensuality and their dreams and their visions and their entrepreneurship and midlife crisis? Or authenticity. There's that.
Or am I just finally caring so little about what other people think that I'm
Yes.
honoring who I am. And
Yes.
yeah.
Preach it from the mountains. I love
Yes.
it.
Yeah. Mm,
I so adore you. I'm so glad that we met. I'm so
me
glad that
too.
we became fast friends. I look forward to just having these conversations, bringing more into the social media world, but even more just into each other's lives. And, you
Absolutely.
know, I have a list. I'm, like you, I feel so much gratitude for the people I've met
Hmm.
that I'm like, okay, well, I have to go to Canada. I
Yeah.
have to go to Los Angeles, and I
Yeah.
really need to get to South Africa because I'm meeting so many amazing people, and you are just such a light.
Oh,
And, you are like that woman who was the earth angel for you. That's who you are for people that you meet. So
oh,
keep
thank
being
you.
you.
And you are too. I'm so grateful for this connection. And I I don't know what our future together looks like tangibly, but I know we're going to be working together. And I do want to follow through with doing some lives with you.
Yes.
Um and just keep continuing this conversation on an open platform where people can tune in.
Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.